The first rule of Battle Arena is, don't talk about Battle Arena. But I'm going to break that rule and tell you all about it. Stay with me. This is my Battle Arena map. Battle Arena is a D&D 5e player versus player skirmish game, where players take each other on in a fight to the end. As in Thunderdome, 2 characters enter, 1 character leaves. I developed this as a short play alternative to longer traditional RPG sessions for Blackwood D&D Winterfest, a D&D event we hold in Bridgetown, Western Australia every year. It was designed for players not currently in a game session, as well as a quick introduction to D&D combat for any new players. How does Battle Arena work? Basically, it's just a combat arena for players using D&D 5th edition combat rules. Games can be player versus player, team versus team, or even free-for-all, with the last player standing as the winner. I built this custom board out of foam. It's small, which keeps the battles close range and quick. The rock here on this end is the only real cover, but you can add scatter terrain if you wish. The plan is to eventually make several more boards with different terrain layouts, but this year was an experiment, just to see if the Battle Arena concept was feasible. One advantage of arena combat like this is the game doesn't really need a DM in the traditional sense. Players run the combat themselves, rolling initiative and making their attacks using the normal rules. The DM just guides play and arbitrates any rules disputes. One advantage is, because you're not strictly the DM, you can advise players how best to use their abilities or class features. We had feedback this was a useful aspect for newer players to understand how to better utilise their characters. The Battle Arena is just built out of some sheet foam. You can buy this, but I approached our local hardware and white goods store. They get tons of this as packing for fridges and washing machines, and were happy to give it away for free. The rock here and the raised platform area were just carved from a thicker piece of foam. This was done with a sharp blade. It's a messy process, so do it somewhere that's easy to clean. I used my shed. I glued the pieces together using PVA glue, but you can use construction adhesive. PVA takes longer to dry, a couple of days, but it was what I had on hand. Just be careful using glues on foam. Solvent-based glue will eat through the styrofoam. I marked out a 1-inch grid on the foam using a metal ruler and a cocktail skewer. Just running the skewer along the ruler a couple of times will score the foam enough to make a grid you can see after painting. Each square represents 5 feet of movement, the same as most D&D maps. Scoring the raised areas was a challenge. You might notice they don't quite match up, but that never seemed to be a problem during play. It just bugged me. I'll take more care with the next one. With the grid marked out, next comes painting. I gave the board 2 coats of flat black acrylic paint. This was the cheapest acrylic poster-style art paint I could find at my local craft store. This isn't precision work, so I used a 1-inch brush here. A day's drying time was left between coats. If the paint is too thick, you can add a bit of water to the paint for the first coat. This will get the paint into all the nooks and crannies. The second coat will fill in the colour and fix any white specks left over from the first coat, giving a solid black base to work from. The last step was a heavy dry brush of neutral grey. I used a tube of cheap artist acrylic for this, with a cheap brush from a nylon set bought from a dollar store. Don't use good brushes for this. A thicker round or flat brush will work great here. Dry brushing is a painting technique of loading the paint onto the brush, wiping the majority off, then rubbing or dragging the brush over the surface to coat some but not all of the surface. The idea here is to make the surface look like grey stone, blending the grey with the black base colour to create the stone-like texture. Dry brushing the surface leaves the scored grid lines black, showing the grid clearly for character movement. Experiment with this. If you go too hard with the grey, you can touch up with the black to knock it back. Fiddle until you're happy. It took me about 3 goes before I realised I was going too light and needed to get more grey on the surface. It should look like grey with black shadows, rather than black with grey highlights. Now we've got the Battle Arena board. What are the rules? Most of the board is normal movement. Each square costs 5 feet of a character's movement. This applies to the ramps onto the rock in the raised platform area as well. The cliff edges are 10 feet tall and count as difficult terrain. They cost 10 feet of movement for each square traversed. Plus the cliffs require a successful DC 12 athletics check to climb or descend. Failing the check leaves the character prone at the bottom of the cliff. If they were climbing up, they take no damage, just 1d6 dignity damage to their pride as they scramble to try and get up the cliff. However, if they were descending the cliff, they lose their footing and faceplant, for 1d6 bludgeoning damage. The rocky outcrop on the map provides concealment to a creature behind it. Medium or smaller creatures have total cover. Large creatures gain 3/4 cover, plus 5 to their armour class, while huge and gargantuan creatures gain half cover, plus 2 to their armour class. Medium-size or smaller creatures behind a ramp portion of the outcrop receive half cover. Other creatures gain no benefit. Players battle until a character falls to 0 hit points. Once a player reaches 0 hit points, they're out of the game. The last player standing is declared the winner. I would also recommend restricting players to level 3 or below to keep games short. We printed and laminated some of the free characters from Wizards of the Coast, as well as some we made on the Fast Character website. So that's Battle Arena. It was an experiment for this year's Winterfest, but it was generally well received. We witnessed some hard-fought and exciting battles. Most players used the rocky outcrop for cover, while some even used the cliffs to grapple and hurl their opponents down to cause damage. Battle Arena is a fun way to get players used to D&D combat, while being easy to run for a DM. Plus you can use it as a training tool to get newer players using their characters' class abilities or spells to their best advantage. It also worked well in an event setting to give players something short to do while they were waiting for a game session to start, or for a player spot to open up. Feel free to take the Battle Arena idea and run with it if you think it might work for your group or event. There's nothing unique here, just an interesting D&D skirmish idea. I'll put the details of the terrain rules in the description below. Happy gaming, and remember, 2 characters enter, 1 character leaves.